Welcome, guys, to the Touchdown Podcast. We are in week 14 right now. And just before I introduce everyone, Panthers and playoffs are officially eliminated from the playoffs. Womp, womp. So, without further ado, I'll pass it on to my two co-hosts. They can introduce themselves. And how have you guys been?
Yeah, good. Good. Well, not good actually. That's a big old lie. I watched the Atlanta Falcons yesterday in their biggest game in about 5 years. Do nothing for about 3 quarters and then come alive for a bit. And then I don't want. I hate piling on about the Falcons on this thing because there are so many other good things in the NFL to talk about, but that ruined my weekend well and truly. So, forget about United getting blown out by Bournemouth. This was the thing that totally deflated for the weekend. I was, oh my god. Anyway, otherwise fine.
Yeah, Drake London had a hell of a game, but being a United fan, yeah, I can't imagine you've had a fun weekend.
It is what it is, you know. With United, I can't complain at any point because my entire childhood was pretty good for sports. So anytime I just like complain now, it's just like, what are you moaning about? It's like, I know things are bad elsewhere, but things are bad now because it's happening to me. Like, and I'm not used to it.
It could be worse. You could be in League One with a 2-year transfer embargo and unpaid wages. So,
yeah, I mean, so this is the thing. I've got to put it into context, but at the same time, I'm not used to it. So, anyway, I've let someone else talk.
I'm good. I'm good as I can be. Sunday was a bit crap. Like Newcastle got smashed at Spurs, and then obviously the Lions decided to play 3 quarters of just total mistake-ridden football. The 1 quarter where they decided we're going to stop being penalised, they actually destroyed the Bears. But then everything else around it was kind of let's just get as many penalty flags as possible today. So that kind of kiboshed that. Just one of those rubbish days at the office. But I'm not too bad. You know the one thing when your team loses, particularly in the 6 o'clock window, is like when other stuff happens later on. So obviously with the Kansas City thing and the Philadelphia, like other shit can kind of like your stuff kind of gets buried. So like the only people that really know that the Falcons lost are Falcons fans. You know, like ultimately it's like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, nobody's talking about that's okay. That's okay. Do you know what I mean? Like nobody's talking about us today because obviously there's so many other issues. This is the one good thing about losing at 6 o'clock. And that as well is like you don't have to hang around if you want to go to bed. And I needed to go to bed at like 11 o'clock. Like I can go to bed now. You know what I mean? I'm not going to let this ruin the rest of my day.
yeah, no, it's been an interesting weekend, especially those early games. Especially now, half the league is basically playing with backup quarterbacks. I feel like basically every game that was an Eagles, Cowboys, Niners, and then Chiefs Bills was just buried. I feel like it's just wholly unimportant to a lot of people right now, which is actually going to lead us into the biggest takeaways and talking points. Now, a lot of people have been talking, about the Chiefs. They're kind of struggling, and there's a lot of offensive things going on. Kadarius Toney seems to be a little bit of a problem when he's not dropping balls. He's lining up wrong, and Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid's throwing their toys out the pram. But my actual biggest takeaway is, do the Bengals need to have a conversation with Joe Burrow? Because all year, outside of those first 4 weeks where he just could not play, he seemed to be making silly mistakes, checking out of things he didn't need to check down to. And the whole fan base was kind of up in arms talking about Zach Taylor's play calling. But besides that one game against the Steelers, where it was absolute torrential downpour, Jake Browning has run this offense very efficiently, very smart. He hasn't turned the ball over much. He's made very accurate and smart throws. So if you guys have seen any Bengals games, do you think the coaching staff needs to sit down with Joe Burrow and say, hey, stop overthinking it. You don't need to check out of everything. You don't need to make 8 million audibles on every single play. What are your guys' thoughts on that?
Listen, like I love Burrow. You watch them, obviously. This season felt hard to judge because the early part of the season he was so hurt that like realistically he shouldn't have been playing. They should have just if we knew now what we know now that Jake Browning was pretty good, you would have just started him at the start. Do you know what I mean? So like and then obviously he got healthy and then the game at San Francisco and the Arizona game he looked back to normal. Like there was like, oh well MVP Joe Burrow's back. Do you know what I mean? Like he looked I always think with stuff like that, like players always have dips in like form at any point. Like I think the thing with Burrow is none of it's ever like worrying. It's probably more like maybe he tried to do too much on his own. Where you got like you look at the Bengals, like when they're fit and healthy, they've got arguably the most talented group of maybe outside of the tight end, but in terms of certainly wide receivers and the running backs are very good as well. Like that's as good as you look at Kansas City. Kansas City would kill to have Jamar Chase and T Higgins and Tyler Boyd. Do you know what I mean? Like so many other teams would love to have that group. I think maybe sometimes it's just from Burrow, like just trust the process and trust your own teammates because they're capable of making big plays too. You don't have to necessarily be Superman. Sometimes you can just be a facilitator. And I think the one thing, like over a 17-game season, like okay, Burrow didn't play one, but like you're gonna have days where it's on you, and then there's gonna be certain days where it's like, well, I'm gonna feed Jamar Chase and let T Higgins and Tyler Boyd kind of do the heavy lifting. I just got to be efficient and not make mistakes. So I think that's the one balancing act that like all quarterbacks have probably got to do. I don't know if you'd have a conversation with them. I think it's just more like you don't have to like be 110% all the time. Do you know what I mean? Sometimes, throwing a 4-yard completion to Tyler Boyd in the middle of the field is okay. Like, you don't have to necessarily overthink it all. So, from that point of view, like, I don't see an issue with it. As I said, it's probably just a small chat. And I think Burrow will be fine long term. Like, as long as if they can get him fully fit and ready, he's always going to be like there or thereabouts.
Yeah, he's one of those guys. I think sometimes he does try to play hero ball a little bit. So used to, before he even came into the NFL, that Heisman season, it was highlight play after highlight play after highlight play, 5 touchdowns a game, almost every single game. So I think he just needs to look. He's got incredible weapons. He just needs to maybe trust his guys a bit more and say, you know what, it's okay to throw a 3-4 yard check down to Joe Mixon or get one out to Tanner Hudson real quick. Sorry to cut you off there, Tom.
No, good. I mean, I think what we're seeing from Browning at the moment is probably going to have a larger impact on how Joe Burrow approaches next season than any conversation they could have with him, because he's literally just seeing somebody who is very clearly limited talent-wise and far below himself talent-wise be efficient and successful in a very well established or constructed sort of offense. He's watching him sort of succeed in this, and you can probably just think to himself, okay, maybe I don't need to do the hero ball stuff. Maybe I don't need to be 100% of the offense all the time. And realistically, you don't, because like Tay pointed out, they've got one of the best receiving groups in the league. Like running back group is sensational when it gets going. Like as long as he's just standing upright, he's fine. But this is probably, I think, obviously when you're a top end NFL quarterback or a quarterback who's come into the NFL top of the draft class, you're number 1 or top 5 or whatever. You've got the weight of expectation on your shoulder from day one. Just having a step back might be the most beneficial thing for his career, kind of long term. He can just kind of take stock at where the team is and where he is, and just kind of go, all right, I'm not going to play for the rest of the season, but I can watch this offense kind of move without me. I'm fine. I don't have to do all this stuff. And then next season, you're probably better for it. There's going to be a point in the next couple of years where the Bengals start to lose those players purely for financial reasons, and then they start to bring in other players, and he will be better for that experience. So yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily think it's a case of kind of sitting down and going, you don't need to do this, because he's smart enough to know himself. I think he's great. I think he's a great quarterback, and he's going to be great for a long time. As long as he stays healthy, touch wood. But yeah, they're in a pretty good place at the moment. I think the one thing that I would sort of not necessarily worry about is the thing that sort of hangs over all understudy quarterbacks with Browning, is that how much of this is him riding high, sort of adrenaline kind of thing, and how much of this is sustainable. There's always going to be a concern that it might just come down to earth at one point, and then at that point you start to wonder, like, how far can the offense take the Bengals? Well, right now they're looking pretty fine. They're in that race. They're alive and in the postseason hunt. So yeah, good for them. And yeah, Burrow's going to be fine. I think I feel like that goes without saying. It would be weird for some 32-year-old in Oxford to turn around and go, Burrow's got problems, because he's not. He's absolutely fine. But yeah, it's good. They're in a good place. They're in a far. I will put my hands up and say, for all of his coaching career, I've given Zach Taylor a bit of stick. I've never really bought into him. I feel like he's kind of proven a point to me. He's following me on Twitter, probably. Fair play, proven wrong kind of thing. So, like, yeah, good for them. Good for them. Yeah, he'll be fine. I'm just rambling at this point. So yeah.
No, that was my takeaway. Like I said, the whole fan base, to an extent, was kind of on him about play calling, and then outside of that Steelers game where he only decided to run the ball like 8 times, he's called 2 very, very good games. Not against like elite teams or whatever, but he's called fairly good games against these teams. So it's going to be interesting to see how this progresses and how maybe that rolls into next season with Joe Burrow. But enough of talking about, everyone's favorite team, America's team, as I think the Bengals are called. What are your guys' biggest takeaways from the weekend?
Dave, you want to go first?
Yeah, I'll go first. I think my biggest takeaway is good on Zach Wilson and Jake Browning. I saw a tweet when Jake Browning came in, like before he started the game on the Monday night against Jacksonville, and I remember it was Mina Kimes, who, to be fair, is like a big name and a famous name, and I think she said, "Oh, look, you better get used to watching a lot of punts with Jake Browning, the quarterback," which, like, for someone who's very respected and very kind of like established and a very smart person, I just thought, like, there's no need to take a cheap shot at this kid. Like, we get it. Okay, he's not Joe Burrow. He's not, Heisman winner, LSU championship winner, first overall pick Joe Burrow. Like, we get that. Do you know what I mean? Like, Jake Brown isn't going to suddenly win the MVP award, but dude hadn't even played a game yet. Do you know what I mean? And like, you got to kind of like, I feel like this year in particular, we've gotten kind of so, and the same with Wilson. Like, okay, Zach Wilson's a flawed quarterback, and again, I'm not going to sit here and say like he's the new incarnation of Dan Marino or this, that, and the other, but like, basically there's a kid who came from Utah. Now I know Utah a little bit. It's a small place. It's basically like going from, I don't know, like the Shetland Islands into the middle of London. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's kind of like, it's a small place. Everyone's kind of tight knit. There's not a lot of like outside influence or outside people that go in and live in Utah. And then he gets dropped into the one of the worst teams in the last 30 years in NFL history, in one of the most volatile sports cities in the world. And like, here they are every Monday morning. Oh, well, Zach Wilson's a jerk. Oh, this kid's immature. This kid can't handle. Do you know what I mean? Like, all these kind of personal attacks. And I'm like, dude, like, this offensive, like, okay, Zach Wilson's not great, but you got Nathaniel Hackett, who's only there because he's Aaron Rodgers' friend. You got a group of skilled players that were brought in because Aaron Rodgers can play with them well, but you've seen like people like Alan Lazard and these people who aren't very good when Rodgers is out. So you've got that. Basically, you've got Garrett Wilson, a paper mache offensive line, and Nathaniel Hackett, who can't call offensive game plans, as we've seen over the season. And I just thought, like, you guys want to like just guillotine this kid because like of everything else that's around him. Like, you just give him a break. Okay, he's not going to live up to the second overall pick, but listen, if you just take a breath and give him a chance, he might actually show you that there's some things there that you can work with. And to be fair, yesterday he showed, for all of his flaws and kind of his bad decisions, he also can make some pretty good plays. That's the one thing everyone saw at BYU, was that like, dude can throw a football pretty hard. Do you know what I mean? And he's got that kind of ability, and he's not got like, in the NFL. You're not going to get away with it as much as what you did at BYU, and that's been his whole problem this whole time. But I just think, like, sometimes some of these personal attacks on these young quarterbacks, before you've even really given them like a legitimate chance, I just feel like, especially the way the Jets have handled the Wilson thing, where like they dropped him for Tim Boyle. I watched Tim Boyle for the Lions when Goff got COVID. Tim Boyle shouldn't be in the NFL. Like he threw more interceptions than touchdowns in college. And it wasn't like he was playing at Alabama or Georgia or any, you know what I mean? So like, he was a journeyman kind of quarterback in college, and then he got jobs in the NFL because Aaron Rodgers liked him, which is why he ended up in the Jets, because they were together in Green Bay for a number of seasons. And people were saying, "Oh, Tim Boyle's, give him the go, give him the go." And Wilson got dropped unfairly for Tim Boyle, who came in and was really bad. And then they go back to him like, like, you guys have messed this kid around so badly. So good for him yesterday, playing so well, playing the best game of his career against like a decent Texans team. That's just kind of my big takeaway, is like, we just stop with like the personal attacks on these young guys who are trying to figure it out, on like, particularly in the Jets' situation, like a really bad situation. Like, there's nothing good about the Jets' offense at all outside of Garrett Wilson.
Yeah, he's actually shown a level of maturity. I'm not, unfairly or fairly, I thought he was always kind of a little bit of an immature guy. And that could be how things have played out before he got into the NFL. But he's really handled this season so maturely, which I think a lot of people are surprised at. He's handled the whole situation very well. He knew he was going to be sitting behind Rodgers, and he handled the Tim Boyle thing, didn't complain, didn't, moan about his coaches or anything like. And he's come in and he's played fantastically yesterday, quite frankly. And it was actually funny. We were at Paycor watching the game, and during TV timeouts, it brings up the passing leaders on the day. And it was Jake Browning, Zach Wilson, and Joe Flacco at that point in the day. And I said, what the hell is going on in the league? That the top 3 passers in the league right now are Joe Flacco, Jake Browning, and Zach Wilson.
No, it was a strange day, but as I said, good for them. Again, and I suppose with the Jake Browning thing, you kind of, as more tape emerges on him, will teams start? So Josh Dobbs kind of came in and had that miracle game and those miracle 2 weeks against Atlanta and New Orleans, but then as teams started to get more and more film on him, they kind of okay, well, he's a backup for a reason. You look at, since the last 2 weeks, they've scored a combined 13 points. Obviously, that game was just the most bizarre game of NFL football you'll probably ever see with their game. So I suppose that's the one issue with Browning might be, is that as teams get more and more film on him, how will that kind of counteract? And as for Wilson, I just think he's got to grip it and rip it. He's just got to say, you know what, I'm probably not going to be in New York next year anyways. I just got to go out swinging. And if I throw a million interceptions trying to play hero ball, then so be it, because that one time it might work. So for him, he's just got to kind of it's hard because New York's so much noise, and the Jets are always spoken about. But he's got to find a way of just blocking the noise for these final few games and just, you know what, I'm going to go out on my sword, and so be it.
Can I just have a couple of bits? Number one, Tim Boyle, the way that his career path has gone, he's 100% going to win a Super Bowl with the Ravens in 2 months' time as a backup there. That's unfortunately just the way it's going to go. Number two, Zach Wilson. I'm getting sick of writing about Zach Wilson. I've written about Zach Wilson 4 times in my weekly thing. Every single time I end it with, that'll be the last we hear of Zach Wilson this year. 3 weeks later, Zach Wilson's doing something. He's out. He's back in. He's out. He wasn't supposed to play this week because he was apparently on the fence over whether or not he wanted to risk his health, but he did it anyway, and obviously played really well. Getting out of New York is just going to be the best thing for him kind of long term. I don't know what his career in the NFL kind of looks like for the rest of however long he's got. I think it's kind of clear to everybody that it's just not going to happen at the Jets. I don't know who's going to fix the Jets, but it's not going to be him. Ideal scenario would be just to go somewhere, as long as he doesn't get traded, to pick your spot somewhere that's quiet, somewhere that already has an established kind of quarterback, and just to stay out of the spotlight for a bit. I remember Marcus Mariota had a bit of a rough time with the Titans, and then basically did that. He went to the Raiders and just sat behind Derek Carr for a bit, came in once or twice, and everyone kind of forgot all of the bad things, and then got the opportunity to start for another team, or the Falcons, obviously. But he got the opportunity to start, and that's probably where it's going to go for him. He will get another chance to start for a team at some point in the future. I just think it would be best for him kind of long term not to jump at the team that will give him that chance to begin with. Try and be a bit smart with it. Just try and take yourself out of the spotlight for a bit and allow your reputation to kind of heal itself. Or, I mean, memories are short in the NFL anyway, but just try and get people to forget that you were pretty bad by and large with for the majority of your career, and you were actually a second overall pick with a cannon arm and the ability to make plays off script. But you're absolutely right, and I look forward to writing about him again as he leads the Jets to an unlikely playoff spot in a few weeks' time.
So there we go from Tom, AFC champion New York Jets. What are your takeaways from this weekend, or your talking point?
Yeah, so I've gone with that. The Cowboys beating the Eagles is probably their most impressive win in about a billion years. They've become the team that beat up bad teams, right? The Cowboys are the team that do it when they're supposed to, but when they come up against somebody of any note, they just kind of fold. Be that in the playoffs, be that in regular season. It's just kind of been their calling card for the last probably 5 or 6 years at this stage. They have an opportunity, or had an opportunity last night, to, number one, make a statement about where the conference and the division is going to go, but number two, who they are this season. They came really close to beating the Eagles. a few weeks back or a month ago, to the point where they were like 2 yards away on like first down, and then like 20 yards away on third down, or something ridiculous. Anyway, that was a really impressive victory for them. They not only won, but they won with style, with panache. It was just kind of, it was a non-factor. They did it. They overcame their one hurdle, and now what do we kind of beat the Cowboys with now? Because they are the team that can beat the best team or one of the best teams in the conference. Does that mean they can go on and beat one of the best teams in the AFC? Maybe. I thought that I've always liked Dak Prescott. I think he gets some unnecessary stick, probably because he plays for the Cowboys. It's just one of those things where whoever plays for that team is just going to get stick regardless. But I've always had a bit of a soft spot for him, and he was excellent. He's been excellent all the majority of this season. Same goes for the team around them. I mean, probably the one thing that's going to hold them back long term is Mike McCarthy. But that's a conversation for another day, probably. So I guess the question is now, how far does this road go for the Cowboys? Can they hold on to the division and therefore a home playoff? Bearing in mind they have not lost a home game all season. Can they go that deep into the playoffs as they are supposed to? Like, what is their? I appreciate that Eagles aren't done. Like, it would be foolish for me to go, they've lost against the two other best teams in the conference, so they're kind of done now. Yeah, that was just not going to be. That's not how it goes. But like, where does this end for the Cowboys? Are they back? Are they that? What are they?
I was going to say, team from Texas saying we're back is kind of, always brought bad luck in the future. I think University of Texas fans could kind of attest to that. They were absolutely cursed by saying we're back every single time they won a half-decent game. But as far as the Cowboys could go, I think they're a really well-rounded team. They've played both sides of the pool pretty good, and beating the Eagles is no small feat. Not a lot of teams can do that. But is Dak playing himself into the MVP conversation? I mean, for lack of kind of guys who can make it this year, I know try not to make it the quarterback award, but is Dak looking like an MVP candidate how he's been playing this year?
I'm being told that I'm being told that he is. I'm in a group chat of people that I started watching the sport with around the same sort of time. And about 3 weeks ago, my mate Dan said Dak Prescott should win MVP, and I was like, come on, it's Lamar. But like every single week, pretty much since then, it's been like just finding his own comment and replying to it with like the eye emojis. It's like, ooh. It's like, ooh. And I wake up this morning, it's like, ooh. And it's like, yeah, he might be, like if it's one of the, it's the quarterback award at the end of the day. If it's not a quarterback, it's probably Hill, but he has to be in the conversation at this point, right? Like, I'm struggling. Usually it's just like, well, it's Mahomes or Aaron Rodgers, and like I don't think either of them are going to win it this year. So what is it? It's Lamar and Prescott, and maybe CJ Stroud, if we're being really, really like, what's the word I'm looking for? Not controversial, contrarian. There we go. How contrarian do I want to be? Where do I think CJ Stroud should be the MVP? Yeah, maybe, but Dak Prescott, he's got to be in that. I think he's probably got to be in that conversation. I don't know what the odds are at this stage. I know that he was sort of leaping up the list not too long ago. He's probably top at this point, right?
I think probably he's up there at least. I mean, I know we say it's a quarterback award, but I think you mentioned Tyreek Hill. I mean, if he hits 2,000 yards, I think you're going to have to give the award to him. But this is probably Dak Prescott's best year he's ever played in the NFL. It's the best he's ever looked. He's playing to that contract money he's been given. And I think if Tyreek, somehow fumbles the bag and doesn't hit 2,000 yards this year, I think it's probably between Dak and Lamar.
Yeah. Cowboys have got one big test though. Buffalo away this Sunday is not going to be easy at all. That's the one thing. Like I saw like a graphic of like the remaining schedule for the Cowboys and the Eagles. Like the Eagles is okay. Like there's not like they've come through a gauntlet where they've played Miami, they've played Kansas City, they've played Buffalo, they played San Francisco. Obviously Dallas twice in there as well. Like Philadelphia's schedule has softened a little bit in the final 4 weeks, where like with it being basically the same teams having the same record, obviously Dallas having the tiebreaker. You wouldn't be surprised if the Cowboys went and lost in Buffalo. It's that type of place where like And it's not a knock on the Cowboys at all. I just feel like the Bills are kind of lurking a little bit. They're kind of dangerous without necessarily looking dangerous, because we all think, well, if they click and put a full game together, they're going to be so difficult to beat for anybody. And that's the type of situation I just feel like home crowd of Buffalo could kind of upset Dallas. I think if the Cowboys can come through that, because at home they're fine, like they look almost unbeatable at home. Like I feel like now the San Francisco 49ers could go there and would probably be the underdogs. When you think of that playoff game 2 years ago when they botched the ending, when Dak couldn't get the snap off before the game ended, like the 49ers went in that day as favorites. I don't think San Francisco would go to Dallas as betting favorites now, such as like Dallas's home field advantage. But away from home in cold conditions, winter conditions, I get that the Cowboys are used to playing New York, Washington, Philly, but just feel like that's a massive test. If they can come through and win that, you feel like saying NFC Championship maybe at a minimum, because like the Eagles, like again coming out of that gauntlet, they're kind of struggling. Like they got a lot. It's all fixable. And listen, the Eagles could turn it around next week and look like the best team in the NFL again. It's always fixable, but you would say like the Eagles and the Lions are kind of crawling a little bit at this moment in time. They've hit a bad patch of form at the wrong time. Where you look at Dallas and San Francisco, they just look red hot at the right time. Like as I said, like ultimately it feels like it's set up maybe for Dallas to go to San Francisco in the NFC Championship game. That's how well those two teams are playing relative to everybody else. Like you look at the Vikings, they're the 6th seed. They scored 3 points yesterday against the Raiders team that is just going up. You know what I mean? So like, there's not a team in the NFC outside of Philadelphia that I can see kind of upsetting Dallas or San Francisco. And so that's why I feel like if everything kind of stays in place and if injuries don't kind of come up and ruin things, I feel like that's going to be the game that defines this Cowboys season, like so much, which is rubbish because like you play 17 odd games and you play them so well, and that's going to be one. But that's the world that the Cowboys live in. So from that perspective, like it does feel like we're heading towards that. Which let's see. Like I think Dak is playing well enough to win the MVP. I wouldn't give it to a quarterback this year. I'd give it to Tyreek Hill. But if it's going to be a quarterback, I think Dak or Lamar. Maybe Brock Purdy, because like all the stats, I wouldn't give it, but like people keep campaigning for Brock Purdy to give it. Do you know what I mean? I personally wouldn't, but like it shows kind of how weird a year the QB year has been, because if like Purdy, Lamar, and Dak are kind of the 3 betting favorites for the MVP, any normal year, Brock Purdy probably isn't even in the top 10. Like if Burrow's fit and if Mahomes is playing normally and if Allen's, you know what I mean? Like it's kind of strange year for it, but Dak's playing the best football of his career, and the Cowboys are really, really good.
Yeah, if Mahomes has a guy who can actually catch footballs and line up offside, I think we might be talking about Mahomes as potentially an MVP candidate, because he's had, I think, probably the Chiefs have had more dropped balls than any other team this year. That it certainly feels that way watching them. So I think probably Prescott might have to be the guy this year. Like I said, if Tyreek doesn't hit that 2,000 yards, which would be incredible if he did. But let's move on to our next section. We're going to do games of the week. And if you want to kick this one off, Tayyib.
Yeah, Jets Texans. I only picked this because this was my ballsy callsy, and I remember the touchdown Twitter thing at me. This is if I lost my mind. And there was a little bit of like, but it was like I felt for CJ Stroud yesterday. It was a difficult game in terms of weather conditions. Again, you think Houston play in an indoor stadium at Reliant Stadium with a roof on. And not that excuses him, because he played at Ohio State, for goodness sakes, in the Big Ten. There's not many indoor stadiums in the Big Ten. But I just thought it kind of had that feel of an upset. And really, it's the worst CJ's played since week 1 in his debut against Baltimore, which was a pretty difficult task when you think of what Baltimore have gone on to do. He just looked like everything we've said about him up to this point. He looked the opposite. He looked rattled and unnerved, hurried. Like that Jets. That's the kind of one big shame with the Jets this season. Is the defense is really good. Like they can really get after quarterbacks and make life really difficult for quarterbacks. But from that point of view, like weather-wise, and I just felt like I kind of came away with it disappointed from Houston's perspective that here was a chance, and maybe it's being too harsh because nobody thought they'd have 7 wins this season after being so bad for a number of seasons. I just felt like it was an opportunity missed against a Jets team that isn't really fighting for anything. Like, let's be realistic. If the Jets sneak into the playoffs, are you really going to bring Aaron Rodgers? Like, Do you know what I mean? Like the Jets' season is pretty much done. Like they're not going to make it to the playoffs, because they'll need like so many results to go their way. So I thought, from the Texans' perspective, they looked like the team a little bit in awe, a little bit kind of concerned about the situation, almost like, well, we're the favourites, we should win, but hang on, we're on the road against a very good defense in difficult weather conditions, and it was the first time where they looked kind of nervous and kind of unsettled and a little bit rattled. I think the other thing as well is Nico Collins got hurt, Tank Dell's already out, so like losing them two, like Tank Dell was another one. Like if you took him and CJ Stroud might have finished first and second in offensive rookie of the year voting. He was playing that well for Houston. Obviously, he breaks his leg. Nico Collins, I think, had a hamstring partway through that game, and then Stroud got a concussion. So it was just another kind of like a really bad day for a Texans team, that because Indianapolis are kind of still hanging around. Like the Texans have lost the tiebreaker to the Colts, so the Colts are now kind of holding the edge with that playoff spot, that final spot. So I'm not sure. Like I just felt with games against Cleveland and that to come as well, I just felt like an opportunity missed. I got to give credit to the Jets because like they're not playing for anything really. Like Zach Wilson's playing for his career somewhere away from New York, but as a team, they're not playing for playoff positions or anything like that. But they were probably the most well prepared, well drilled they've been since week one against Buffalo. Certainly on defense, anyways. Like it was that good. Obviously, they made life miserable for Allen in week one, and it was the same really in this game. They hurried him, they got after him, they kept hitting him, kept tackling him, kept sacking him, and it was one of those kind of welcome to the NFL games for CJ Stroud and the Texans. It's a shame because I feel like it's going to be difficult for them now to make the playoffs because, like, I think they lose out on a number of tiebreakers with other people apart from Pittsburgh. But I think that, Indianapolis certainly, I think Cleveland certainly have better tiebreaker records than Houston. So that's kind of a sad part of it, that I'm not sure if they can now make the playoffs. But they're a young team and they'll still learn from it. But it was a beat down. Like it was a really kind of ugly loss. It was the type of loss, let's be honest, we all thought we were going to see more of from Houston this season. And it was just weird that it came against the Jets.
Yeah, no, I think Jets are one of those teams this year. We see it with like the Browns, and I mean the Steelers have a starting quarterback, but it's Kenny Pickett. But like we're seeing a lot of these teams this year that are basically scooting by winning games just because they have a solid defense. And if you want a guy building your defense, I think Salah's one of those sort of coaches, as is D'Amico Ryans. But Stroud's kind of, I think, exceeded everyone's expectations, despite the fact that we knew he was going to be good. No one knew he was going to be this good as a rookie. So I think kind of we're in a situation now where specifically in the AFC, I feel like a little bit more is Jets, Texans, teams scooting by on defense, Browns, Steelers. Ravens are basically the only team in contention in the AFC who actually have a starting quarterback in there who isn't complete ass. So like we're seeing these battles like where the Texans can get their offense going. The Jets, it's Zach Wilson. As much as he played great yesterday, it's not exactly the premier offense you're imagining when Aaron Rodgers signed. So I feel like, yeah, it was an ugly game and it was just all defense. And I think that's what we're going to see more and more as we lead up to the last few weeks of the season.
Do you know what it is? Just as a side, like the amount of 7-6, 8-6 teams in that wild card race in there is just ridiculous. Like, obviously we got Cincinnati, Minnesota, an interconference game, but both teams are 7. Like, I think Pittsburgh are playing Indianapolis straight after the Cincinnati game this Saturday. So again, 7. Like, it's going to be like a battle royal. Like the Broncos are still the Broncos are one game behind Kansas City in the division race. They're not even in a wild card spot at the moment because of obviously all the various tiebreakers that they lost in the early part of the season. So it's kind of like same with Buffalo, like the Bills, Cincinnati, and Denver. You would say are the 3 most potentially dangerous teams in the AFC. None of them are currently holding a wild card spot, and kind of Pittsburgh and Indianapolis and Cleveland are just. I mean, Joe Flacco's a man reborn, but they're kind of scratching onto these things. It's going to be like one where the NFC playoffs look pretty much set. It's just going to be about who the division winners are now. The AFC playoffs are going to change so much, and I'll tell you what, like nobody will want to see Buffalo, Cincinnati, or Denver. They'd much rather see Pittsburgh. You know what I mean? Pittsburgh or Indianapolis or one of those teams in there.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, Joe Flacco still undefeated in first energy, which is just a crazy stat. Not as a Cleveland starter, but there we are. Tom, what did you have down as your game of the week? Unless you've got anything more to add on the Jets and Texans.
Yeah, only thing that I would add is really that's exactly the opposite of what you want if you're a rookie quarterback. If you're going up against that Jets defense, they're so good. They are so good. And it's going to go down as one of the, somebody's going to make a SB Nation or something. They're going to end up making a 3-part, 4-hour long YouTube documentary on the 2023 New York Jets and how good they should have been, kind of thing, because they're just fantastic. But it's the sort of game that he probably needs. Again, not to go long term or whatever, but like if CJ Stroud's going to be a successful long term quarterback in the NFL, you need to have these games where you kind of get brought back down to earth a bit. He's still really good, and I hope he's okay because he got banged up a bit at the end there. But that's that. No, I went with the Browns Jaguars, not because of the game itself. Although I feel like the scoreline doesn't really reflect how the game went. It never really felt like the Jaguars were gonna win that one. They kind of mounted a bit of charge at the end, but yeah, more because I'm finding I've called it the Flacconaissance. You're more than welcome to find your own words there, but I'm finding it fascinating because at no point in his career have I thought Joe Flacco was any good. Even when he won the Super Bowl, he just kind of felt like he was riding the crest of a wave. But has had a lengthy career in the NFL, and you must pick up more than a couple of things if you're going to play as a starting quarterback in the NFL for. I'm going to show my age. It was 15 years now, or something like that. But the Browns could have gone with a young quarterback. They could have stuck with sort of PJ Walker, who I think was unfairly sort of taken out of that team. I think he's kind of fine. I've got a bit of a soft spot for him. But Joe Flacco has been successful in the NFL for a couple of, clearly the Ravens mainly, but he found a little bit of success elsewhere. But he just does things. He's doing things now that he didn't do when he was at his peak, which is that he's not being stupid. The last couple of games, I know that he threw some interceptions last week or whatever, but he's just got the offense kind of ticking over. The Browns' offense is really well put together by and large. They've got some really good players there. And if Deshaun Watson wasn't, number one, a horrible human being, but number two, playing to the standard in which he is being paid, they would probably be the best team in the AFC. That's me going out on a bit. But Joe Flacco's just kind of keeping things ticking over. I like seeing him being successful. I've got nothing against him personally, as far as I'm aware. Feel free to point me out. I'm more than willing to add him to my hit list. But he just kind of reminds me of when I was a younger man, when I was first sort of watching the NFL, and he's there, and Matt Ryan's there, and Matthew Stafford's just coming through, and all of these players are being. Obviously, Matt Ryan's not playing at the moment, or will ever play again. But it's thrown me back to the year 2013 a bit, and I quite like it. I'd be more than happy to stay in the year 2013 for a bit. I quite like that one. Otherwise, it's just a really nice story for the Jaguars. Like, I don't know why Trevor Lawrence has decided he's going to be sort of Rambo. He's going to play through a broken ankle and he's going to take hits left, right, and center. I appreciate that he's sort of putting the team on his back and stuff, but I don't know if that's the right thing, kind of health-wise, look long term. He looked fine. He looked pretty good by and large. Yeah, that's my game of the week. Not because of the game itself, but because I like feeling like I'm younger than I am. So yeah, there we are.
Well, as a David and Njoku fantasy owner, I didn't start him, so that was it was one of those ones where I was like, it's Joe Flacco, it's probably going to start. So I basically didn't start anyone who I had on the Browns roster, and absolutely got mollywopped by about 20 points in the end. So I probably could have used David and Njoku in there. Any comments?
The mad thing, like the only thing I'll say about, we were saying earlier about Burrow trying to play hero, but that's what Lawrence has become kind of the last 3 or 4 weeks, where he's trying to do everything, and obviously Thing being injured, Kirk, like they got a few injuries to their wide receiver core. I think Christian Kirk tore his groin in the Monday Night Football game last week as well. But I feel like Lawrence is like trying to do so much on his own, and he's kind of ending up making more mistakes from it, rather than kind of letting the game just work itself out and slowly work yourself into the game. That's my one concern from Jacksonville. I don't think anything kind of sums up the madness of this season. That like Cleveland played 200 million odd quid to Deshaun Watson, and we never played like a 200 million pound quarterback. They got Joe Flacco from the street, who I agree, he was basically Eli Manning without one less hot streak. Like he was the AFC's Eli, and he had just the one in 2013. Obviously, Eli had two. Um, Joe Flacco off the street, and suddenly he's playing so much better than Deshaun Watson ever did. I don't like it's just bizarre. Weirdly as well, they put him back on the practice squad, so he's eligible to claim by anybody else.
The Ravens have the opportunity to do the funniest thing ever. just only to screw over the Browns, which would be like such an elite move.
Like I saw Schefter's tweet, and I was like, hang on, why would they put Joe Flacco back on the practice squad for? Like, if he's eligible to be taken by, so that's bizarre. Like, I get like apparently it's something to do with the roster moves with PJ Walker and the other people, but that's strange. That, like I said, because somebody could claim him. Like if you like they want to claim him, they can take Joe Flacco. So yeah, like weird. But the other thing with Cleveland now is they're probably going to make the playoffs, and they might play Jacksonville. If the playoffs finished today, they are the 5 seed. The Jags are the 5th seed. No, the Jags are the 4th seed. Cleveland is the 5th seed. They play each other again, which is Jacksonville good for that. Like 2 weeks ago, if Jacksonville won out, they would have won the 1 seed had they won the remaining games on their schedule. Now they, probably be lucky to finish with the 3rd seed.
Yes, Joe Flacco plays well in the playoffs, though. I mean, up until this point in his career, he's only played well in the playoffs.
Yeah.
So they might have a surprise run, which would be absolutely hilarious if they make it this deep into the playoffs after they've just paid Deshaun Watson, I don't know how many gajillion dollars just to ride the bench and sit in a box for the past however many seasons and however many seasons he's going to remain being injured for. So it could be genuinely interesting if they make it to the playoffs with Joe Flacco, because he might just show up and just absolutely dominate, because the last time we saw him in the playoffs, that's pretty much what he did.
I'm all for it. Let me put it straight. If we're going to get 2013 Joe Flacco, I need a new. Who's releasing music? Well, we got a new Green Day album coming out, so that's around the corner. 1975 are doing stuff. It's all coming out.
It's all coming up Flacco, just because of all the old bands we used to listen to when we were younger have said
doing stuff. Yeah,
it's a reunion tour year. One Direction might get back together. Things are going to get absolutely mental. Just to make it fit, that'd be a great soundtrack for
the good times are here. Yeah, the good times are here to stay. Thank you, Joe.
That'd be absolutely phenomenal. But let's go on to the meme or GIF of the week, and I'm gonna start this one off because there's been a lot of bad teams this year. Let's be honest. There's been a lot of teams who are kind of struggling, not really playing very well. And then a couple of backups who have been playing phenomenally. But the one team I think we should be worried about, and the one quarterback we should be worried about, is Desmond Ridder. I was very, very high on him. I'm sorry. I know he's had a fairly decent game, but he's just, as a guy I really, really loved and I was really, really high on, he's kind of shit the bed a lot this year. So my meme of the week is going to be Bold Nonce when he hits the line. I'm going to lose my job. So I think that could apply to about 10 different teams right now, but I'm going to throw it in there for the Falcons because so many games, I hate to say it, Tom, but so many games you should have won and that have kind of been thrown away by Desmond Ridder. Just, fuck it, Drake London's down there, which has only paid off 1 week of the season so far. So that's going to be my submission this week.
I tried to explain to my girlfriend last night my stance on Desmond Ridder. I want to make it absolutely clear. I've got nothing against him. I spoke to him a little bit in the start of the season, when they came up to London. He seems like a really nice guy. I've got nothing against him. And if I'm being completely honest, I don't want there to be another Atlanta Falcons quarterback for the next 15 years because I'm a creature of habit and I like stability. But that's not because I like who he is as a player right now. It's purely because I can't be bothered going through a whole new quarterback search. So if Desmond Ridder could be good for like the next 4 weeks, I'm willing to get on board. But at no point has he given me any reason to go, he's the guy. Oh my God. I don't want to talk about the Falcons. I hate talking.
You don't want Jaden Daniels, no?
So this is I don't know a great deal about the college game, so I know he's good. He's the Heisman guy, right? He's the LSU quarterback. He looks, from what I'm told, absolutely electric. If we're going to be where I want us to be, he's probably out of our range unless we sort of sell a few of the antiques. So listen, stick with Desmond Ridder until Arthur Smith is moved on, and then we can go get someone serious at quarterback, at head coach, and give him a quarterback to work with. If that's next season, fine, do it. But he's a backup. He's just a backup who's being asked to prove that he is more than a backup, and he's a backup who is capable of playing well exclusively in the final 15 minutes of games that are quite close.
I want to say I do like him, Desmond Ridder. I was very, very big on him coming out of UC. I liked everything he put on tape. He was just a notoriously slow starter and really didn't start firing the ball until the fourth quarter. But that's when Cincinnati were winning a lot of games with him. So yeah, I don't want to disparage him too much, but him and Arthur Smith definitely are going to be, I'm going to lose my job. So
it's time to go. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm jumping in with my meme. I'm going in with, so just to piggyback off the back of that. It's just a guy who I think I'm pretty certain that the caption is disappointed guy or something like that. He's literally just he's smiling. He's like, and that's me. Like no one can hear that. It's a podcast, but he's smiling. Something happens, and then he's devastated. And that was me at 8:45 p.m. as Drake London is. I'm jumping around the living room. I've got to be quiet because there's a child downstairs who's trying to sleep. And then 15 minutes later, the Buccaneers go on their longest drive of the season. Oh, tell a lie. The Falcons give up their longest drive of the season to lose, and then lose control of the NFC South and drop out of the playoff spaces. And I'm just like, nah, here we go again. This is where we are. This is where we're at. Blow it up, start again. Until next week, let's see where we are.
But you were really happy with that one catch in the fourth quarter.
This is what's so frustrating. Okay, we're going to talk about this. This is what's so frustrating because he can do things. The throw was, I mean, it was where Drake London was, and it's effort. Drake London's out there somewhere. But the catch was great because that's 100% being picked off by a reasonable defense.
It was double coverage. It was crazy. He put it there, and Drake London said, "Well, I got to go get this now."
Got to go get this. What a game! Drake London had his best game ever. 176 yards or something, and a 2-point conversion, and it was all for nothing. And I don't think anything sums up the modern day Atlanta Falcons than a player playing out of his skin, arriving as a wide receiver one on my fantasy bench again. Unbelievable. 29 points I gave up in a game that I'm going to lose by 3 points. Where's the just? Anyway, yeah, that's Falcons Minute. Done and dusted. Let's talk about something serious.
What about your meme, Tayyib?
Oh, so mine's the Cry More gif from the Oliver Twist movie, which, John, we had 48 minutes into this. I think we've mentioned the Chiefs in passing. But what a meltdown, man. Like, do you know what it is? Like, listen, Patrick Mahomes is a really stand-up guy. Like for as much as the kind of chaos that surrounds him with his brother and other hangers-on that kind of try and live in his own, he's a really good guy. But I put it on Twitter. I think him going up to Josh Allen and kind of saying that was like the worst decision. Thought that was a little bit classless. Like, just shake his hand, say "good job, man," and like get yourself down the tunnel. You know what I mean? Kind of rant and rave about it in the dressing room, in the press conference. Do you know what I mean? Like whatever you want to do with that. But I just thought like, yeah, like you know, like it was the same. Like, yeah, like I feel like that was worse than when Brady didn't shake Nick Foles' hand after the Super Bowl, which again was classless. But Nick Foles didn't need that because he won the Super Bowl MVP. I doubt he cared that Tom Brady never shook his hand. Allen and Mahomes have obviously battled back and forth for a number of seasons now. They played in some epic games. They're going to play in more epic games as the years go on. Just thought like for example, like Tom Brady would never have not shook Peyton Manning's hand, even if it was like a controversial call. You know, he wouldn't have said, "Oh, dude, you guys got to wait." Do you know what I mean? He would have just said, "Well played, dude," and moved on. I just thought it was it was unnecessary for a guy who, since he's been in the league, is kind of, like I said, you can never say, like, you can criticize Mahomes for a lot. You can never criticize him for his character. Like the most we've ever known about him is he has a funny voice. Like kind of, but like that, because like really, like he never, even that first game with the drops when they lost to the Lions, he didn't come out and kind of rip into his teammates, which he could have easily felt obliged to do so. So I just thought from that point of view, like it's just it was the wrong move in the wrong time. I get heat at the moment, but you're better than that. And I actually think the Chiefs as an organization are probably a bit better than that, because ultimately, like, Kadarius Toney was offside. It's weird seeing people like RG3 and that come out and defend like the Chiefs' reaction, because like he is offside. Like, you got to flag it. Like, it would be a bigger crime to not flag it and have Buffalo lose like that. Do you know what I mean? Like, if they didn't throw the flags, like, understandably there would have been massive outrage. So I just thought, like, just leave it. Like, give it a rest. Like, Kansas City got their own problems. Like, that's Tony being offside and losing the game in that way is like a lot lower on their list of problems than what they actually should be focusing on. Just like, work your offense out. They're probably not going to. It's been 14 games now, and like this wide receiver group hasn't stepped up, so they're suddenly not going to turn into like Jerry Rice and Randy Moss and these people in the final 4 games. It's funny actually, it's so stupid how this game works sometimes. It's so week to week. Like 2 weeks ago, I said, "Oh, the Chiefs have got a really easy run in. Like they got the Patriots, the Raiders, these people. Now suddenly they got to go to New England, and for as bad as the Patriots have been, Belichick still knows how to coach a defense. Do you know what I mean? Like that defense will give Kansas City trouble. Like they probably won't score many points, but suddenly it's like an awkward game where like you're only 1 game ahead of a team that conceded 70 points in September. Like you got to go in there and win. You know what I mean? So like the Chiefs have got so many other problems. I just feel like it's a little bit of a cop out to kind of scream and bitch about the refereeing decision when it was the right decision. Just like shut up and focus on your own issues, because you guys have got issues. You know what I mean? You got to sort that stuff out rather than kind of worry about referee making the right decision.
It is a bit surprising to see them doing this as well, because they could have last week, after how things ended with the
Yeah,
pass interference on
yeah,
Scantling, like that
yeah.
was
That was
ridiculous. I
yeah,
know it was probably a non-call because of the absolutely terrible late hit call almost
yeah,
immediately before that. So
yeah,
sometimes ref do non-calls to cancel things out.
yeah,
But to have won, let's be honest, Kansas City have scooted by quite a few games from suspect reffing decisions in the past
yeah,
couple of years. So to have that sort of reaction, I know it's heat of the moment, but it doesn't, especially Andy Reid jumping on board. He's one of the most
yeah,
respected
yeah,
coaches in the league. So seeing it from him is bizarre. And you obviously mentioned Brady in the Super Bowl. I think that's a little bit more forgivable because you've just lost the game that was the only
yeah,
game you cared about all season, and this is week 14 against a team that you're competing with who are a very, very
yeah,
good team. To then get angry after seeing like, if that wasn't called offside, those refs would have had to hide. They never would have been
yeah,
able to go back to Buffalo. It was so egregious. You talked about Kadarius Toney stepping up. Well, he stepped up too far and over the line
yeah,
of scrimmage. You couldn't see the football. So yeah, it's a little bit weird from the Chiefs, especially Andy Reid. I always thought he's a little bit
yeah,
more level-headed. But, heat of the moment, I'm willing to give the guys the benefit of the doubt just because we've never seen really any character
yeah,
flaws from either of them.
yeah.
It's just, a little bit bizarre to see from guys who are
I suppose it's
normally
the
so
one thing,
level-headed.
like some would say, like maybe the pressure of the situation this year. Like normally by this point they've locked up either the first or second seed. They still haven't even won the division yet. As I said, like there's a team that somehow conceded 70 points in September, and we're saying this might be the worst team in the history of the NFL. But now one game, somehow they're 1 game behind the Chiefs. So like I suppose it's that thing of like being in a situation where really they've not been in for the last 4 or 5 years. Like the worst their seasons have ever happened was like losing in the AFC Championship game or losing in the Super Bowl. Where like this year, I suppose, like even for someone like Andy Reid, who is like class personified, like he is one of like the very very best guys in the NFL. For him to kind of come out bitch and moan about it was surprising, but I suppose it shows like how much pressure they're under. They fell down 14-0 in that game, and the fans were booing them off the field when they went 3-0 on one of those drives. So like they're all kind of feeling it, and they're gonna have to find a response. And as I said, through 14 weeks, like we keep telling ourselves, and I kept telling myself, the Chiefs will work it out. But for 14 weeks, they haven't looked anything like a Super Bowl winner, and they got 5 weeks to figure it out before they may have to go on the road to Baltimore or Miami or somewhere else where they might lose.
It's just disappointing. We're going to have to potentially hear Chiefs fans again be like, "See, we were the underdogs. Everyone counted us out." Like, I don't want to have to deal with that shit again. To be honest, do you have anything more to add about the situation, Tom?
Yeah, I mean, I missed the end of the game because I couldn't be bothered with the sport after about 10:30 last night. So I went to bed sort of fairly early and woke up to sort of some of the videos after the Bills game, the game itself. And the first thing I saw was Patrick Mahomes on the sideline just blowing up and being held back. And I just assumed that he was having a go at one of the actual problems, which is Matt Nagy, because the camera pulls out and he's just stood there looking gormless as he tends to do. So I'm thinking, oh, well, I don't really know what's happened here, but I assume Patrick Mahomes has finally given up with this idiot. Turns out it's not. It's just the refs are against us kind of thing. But like, if we're talking about issues that the Chiefs need to solve, Matt Nagy is not very good as an offensive coordinator. I mean, I feel like the biggest issue that the Chiefs are having this season is, don't get me wrong, wide receivers dropping wide open passes is never good. But the drop from the way that the offense has run from Bieniemy to Nagy in the space of a year is quite stark. Like, this is not. I'm not saying this is panic button stuff, because like the Chiefs are still the Chiefs and like Patrick Mahomes is still Patrick Mahomes, and they're gonna. Again, I'm going to lean into what Taylor said. They're going to figure themselves out, because they just inevitably do. But whether or not they figure themselves out to a divisional round defeat or a championship game fixture remains to be seen. Basically, whatever Matt Nagy's doing in the NFL, number one, stop. But just kind of give him do what you do with your little brother, and like pull the controller out. And you're playing Mario Kart. Just like, yeah, you're doing great, buddy. Like pull his headset out and just take control yourself. I don't know what he does, because Andy Reid does it all. But whatever he's doing, it's not working. Give him the Mad Catz controller and just let him do his own thing in the corner.
Just give him a pack of crayons, let him colour some stuff in, because it might actually be more productive. At least they can have some pictures on the fridge in the locker room that way. So before we get into, that'd be great, little X's and O's plays he's drawn up with Crayolas. Before we get into the predictions, obviously we need to talk about last week's predictions. I'm very disappointed in both of you.
Oh yeah, me and Lee, foolish, totally foolish.
Nil points all around, unfortunately. Written here on the notes. And then we're going to get into this week's prediction. I'll give Lee's prediction. Then I'll let Tom, Tayyib, and then I can go last on that. But Lee had 42-10. Packers beating the Giants. Jordan Love over 400 yards and 3 touchdowns.
So nice and reasonable. Yeah, that's a nice and realistic pick from Lee. We're at the point where I don't think any of us are doing very well. I questioned it a couple of weeks ago. Whatever the results are, I genuinely think it might just be like Tayyib at the top with like 3 points across like 40.
Yeah. Just a point, throw a Hail Mary for the points and hope you got a better arm than Tim Boyle.
Yeah. So this is where we're at. Dolphins 36, Titans 7. Jalen Waddle over 117 yards. Why not? Like, it's able to talk about Tyreek Hill being the MVP, the league MVP, because he's gonna break all sorts of records, and fair enough. Give some love to the other guy. Titans are kind of a weird team. I don't think they're very good. I don't think they have been very good all season. They kind of had a little bit of a purple patch when they played the league's favorite get right team in the Falcons. We're talking about them again. But the Dolphins are going to just go and win. They're going to blow the doors off. So there you go.
Yeah, I think Miami will win pretty comfortably. I'll go 33-10. Tyreek Hill for over 200 yards receiving. I was going to say Will Levis is going to catch his own interception again, but I'm not sure how realistic that may or may not be after he did that last week. But yeah, I'd go Tyreek Hill over 200 receiving yards and a touchdown, and the Dolphins to win pretty comfortably. Other games, do you know what it is? Like, for as long as we do this show, I'm never ever going to predict the Green Bay Packers to lose a game. because it's like reverse voodoo. If I start predicting them to lose games, they'll like put 50 on the Giants. So I'm going to say they're going to win pretty. Like I don't think it'll be as big as the Miami defeat because I think like Dayball will still have the Giants kind of revved up and like Dayball's a football guy. Do you know what I mean? Like they're going to try and play with fundamentals and be hard to beat and be physical and aggressive and all those things. And at home, the Giants fans that turn up will expect some sort of performance. But I think the Packers will win 27-14 on that one. Unfortunately, Tommy DeVito won't be able to do me a favor today.
Yeah, I'm an absolute psychopath, so I'm going to pick Giants to win because that's a spicy meatball. I love a bit of Tommy DeVito. I want a guy who's thinking probably more about a chopped cheese than he is the next play coming up when he's on the field. So gonna have a big upset. Fuck it, I say 24-17 to the Giants, and then we'll do. I'm a big fan of Will Levis. Coming out of college, I thought he was absolutely terrible. But the fact he throws a pick, trucks the guy who caught it, and recovers the fumble now means I think that makes him commissioner of the NFL. I think that's how the rules work. So I'm also going to just go. I'm going to put the Titans up on the Dolphins as well. We'll do 34-28. Some one-score games going on, but I love a bit of chaos. So I'll give you those ones.
You're going to overturn the league. You're going to overturn the league in one game. Like you put all of us to shame. Like
it's the fact that you've got to love a guy who throws a pick and then is like, fuck it, I'll do it myself. Just absolutely trucks a guy and takes his own ball back. Like that doesn't happen very often. So maybe he's onto something with the mayo and the coffee.
Do you know what it is though? Like this season's been so mad. Like you wouldn't be surprised if one of those results happened. Like it's just kind of been that weird year where like it's now weird thinking like the Cardinals beat the Cowboys. Do you know what I mean? Like although the Cardinals destroyed the Steelers 2 weeks ago, the Steelers could be in the playoffs for goodness sakes. Like it's just I can't remember a season where it seems like there's only really 3 or 4 teams that are like undisputedly really really good, and then kind of the other teams are either all like so Jacksonville, Kansas City, Detroit, Philadelphia have all got like their own shit to sort out, and then you've got like a really big middle class, and then like Carolina and the Patriots, who are just like rock bottom of everything. Do you know what I mean?
It's definitely not smart to bet against the Dolphins, but it's also not smart to bet against the guy who eats bananas with the skin on.
I'm saying,
that's a different type of competitor.
Yeah, like something mad. Like it's been that type of season where just weird stuff's happening. Like because we've had so many like backups come in. Like it's just like it's been that type of season where Josh Dobbs is practicing the snap from his center on the sideline and then comes in and wins the game. Like it's just mental.
Yeah, that's the only reason I've made these picks. Absolute chaos. So and you know what I mean? It's a Hail Mary. Might get top of the league with my first podcast appearance, which would be absolutely.
Kieran will win it if that happens. He'll win the league.
Just because I like guys who eat bananas with skins on, and Italians make pretty good pasta sauce. That's basically why I picked these games. Nothing about football. I just like the absolute insane personalities that are under center for either team. But before we close it out, thanks for joining me, guys. It's been a fun one. First time I've been on the pod, so it's been very, very enjoyable. Tayyib as well. Lovely to speak to you again for the first time in a while. Tom, I think this may be the first time we've actually spoken on anything that wasn't a group chat. Tayyib just receives messages from me on Twitter every so often about how excited I am about Mike Ashley taking over Newcastle, taking over Reading potentially. So, switching one hell for another there. But thank you for tuning in, guys, as all week. Do you guys got any content dropping this week that you'd like to plug?
Thomas Love, wide.
Yeah, every Wednesday, baby. 5 things that happened. It's written by somebody who barely pays attention. Probably talk about Zach Wilson again. Probably talk about the Atlanta Falcons again. My 2 favorite topics. I'll figure out a way to talk about everybody else in the league. That comes out Wednesdays at about 11 o'clock-ish.
And Tayyib?
No, so no content this week. It's been the frustrating part of this year, because I've had so much other stuff going on. It's been hard to do regular stuff for the touchdown. Hopefully, I'll get back into it. By the time the playoffs have come around, it's just been difficult with the DAZN stuff, which is annoying me now as well because it's just one of those. It takes up so much of my time, so it's a little bit frustrating, but it is what it is.
Yeah, and as always, you can find everyone over on social media. I'll put their Twitter handles in the description. You can find the Touchdown at the Touchdown NFL and the touchdown.co.uk. Remember to hit that like button, subscribe, turn on the bell notifications so you get notified every time we upload. Thank you for joining me, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.